Welcome to the Caregiver Circle podcast, where caregivers connect, share, and feel seen. Join hosts Karen McKevitt and Meredith Stewart each week for conversations, support, and encouragement designed to help you navigate the caregiving journey with confidence, compassion, and community. This is a space built for caregivers, one rooted in connection, understanding, and support. Welcome to the Caregiver Circle.
Welcome back to the Caregiver Circle. We're going to talk about empowerment today.
I'm really excited about today and about this topic.
Me too. And we have a very special guest today. This is someone I've known for over a decade, which is just scary to say out loud. We've been coworkers, teammates, but most importantly, friends. So please welcome Michele Bordonaro.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much for having me. It really is an honor to be here. And I am really excited for this conversation because caregiving, it touches so many parts of our lives. And it's something that very few of us actually ever prepare for at all, ever. And my hope is that today the listeners walk away feeling a little more understood, a little less alone, and maybe, just maybe, a few new ways of looking at the challenges they're navigating just every day inside and out.
I love that. Well, for our listeners, let me tell you a little bit about Michele. Michele is a fellow caregiver. Michele is a certified grief educator who guides and coaches others through grief. And what's the most interesting thing here is that Michele has taken the DISC personality assessments that we commonly use to help in the workplace, and she's actually customized it for grievers. And here's a quick footnote. Grief is so much more than just the death of a loved one. It's really any substantial change in your life and a transition. Michele, what else would you like to say or add to that?
I just love that last point, Karen. One of the things I really wish more caregivers would understand is that caregiving comes with grief. Not just the end of a life, not just death, but anytime life changes in a way, well, none of us chose. It could be a diagnosis, it could be the injury, it could be the rehabilitation journey. It's loss of independence. What about those times when it's role reversal? It is all suddenly a future that looks very different than we expected, and we know what happens when we have a plan. The universe likes to change it around on us a little bit. And that's why I often say grief is just simply the change you didn't want. And when we can begin to look at grief through that lens, all those experiences can suddenly make a little bit more sense. I mean, every day there's sadness, that frustration, pure exhaustion. And what about when guilt shows up? Every caregiver somehow finds guilt along the way. And what is so fascinating is that although change is universal, our responses, we know, are not. We're all individuals. So two people who experience the same situation have completely different reactions. And we know neither one is wrong. They're simply trying to navigate the change the best way that they know how. And that is exactly what brings DISC into my grief coaching. Because when people can understand themselves better, well, they stop fighting themselves. And that's the journey I help people navigate every day. They go from this self-doubt, what do I do? What does everybody else expect me to do? To trusting themselves. From having to look outside of themselves for every answer, to understanding that they are uniquely wired, just like our fingerprint. And they don't have to react automatically. And they can find a way to go from feeling overwhelmed by change to literally being able to navigate it with clarity. And when that happens, truly you can move through grief and caregiving, all those life transitions that get thrown our way unexpectedly, just a little more confidence, little bit more self-acceptance, and little bit more understanding. That's really powerful.
I really love that. I've been a caregiver for a while now, and until I had talked with Karen, I had never put those things together with grief. And when she said that word, I was like, wow, it all made more sense to me. So I'm really excited to talk with you today and hear about the disc and all of these things with you. Can you tell us kind of how you became a caregiver?
Well, when I think about it, caregiving has been woven through almost all my life. As a child, I watched my mother navigate cancer. Later, I supported family members through dementia and Alzheimer's. And today, well, I am caregiving every day in a very different way than I ever anticipated. And you know what I learned is that caregiving isn't just about tasks. Yes, of course, there are appointments. There's a decision every other second. All these day-to-day responsibilities. But you know what happens that we forget about or not notice is there is an emotional journey that's happening congruently at the exact same time. We also know that not every caregiving relationship is simple. Sometimes we're caring for someone we deeply love. And sometimes we're caring for someone we've spent a lifetime trying to understand. Yet we all show up. And one of the things I really learned is that caregiving does come with its own grief. Regardless of those relationships, life changes, the roles change, the relationship that changed, the future has changed. Most of the time, we're not grieving what's happening now, but what never was, or what we hoped it would be. And so the biggest lesson, it's taught me two things can be true at once. I can love someone and feel so overwhelmed. I can love someone and have resentment. And I can be so grateful and so absolutely exhausted. And you can still be committed to caring for someone and still struggle. All those feelings don't make us a bad caregiver. They're actually what makes us so very human.
And Michele, one thing in our grief education classes as we were certifying, one of the items that did also come up is that you can grieve the relationship you wish you had. So you can grieve the fact that we're in this caregiving journey and A, we didn't expect it, but B, we expected to have a different relationship with our person. We expected the old relationship that we had pre-caregiving for that to manifest. Whereas today, it looks a little bit different.
And you've said it better myself, Karen. Spot on.
Meredith, I'm watching you. What's coming up for you as you're hearing this? I know some of this is, things you and I have touched on, and Michele and I have certainly had conversations offline about a lot of this.
Honestly, I needed to hear all of this 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm hearing now how important that the grief education has been for you guys in this journey. I'm speechless for one, obviously, because I'm just listening and just thinking about how it just hits every point.
So many points, and acceptance is being another one of them, right? One of the things that I had to learn really quickly is the first truth. David Kessler talks about that, the very first truth, not what we wanted it to be, not what it should have been, but what's true right now in this moment. And as a caregiver, that can be incredibly helpful because caregiving, it's constantly asking us to face realities we didn't choose. All the time, every second. Again, the diagnosis, the limitations, the change in someone's abilities. And I've learned that acceptance is not approval. It's simply starting each day that I wake up, literally, where am I today, right now? And the more energy I spend fighting that reality, well, the less energy I have for doing the right now and what I need to do for my loved ones, for my mom in my case. All those feelings, they make us real. It's okay that we're sad. It's okay.
And how do you see the crossover between us as caregivers grieving, but our people are also grieving? They have lost what they thought their life was going to be and things like that.
There's no right or wrong way to grieve, only your way. And whenever I'm working with someone or coaching them, I remind them, and I say that a lot, meeting them where they are and simply presence. Not everything needs advice or fixing, just need a tissue, hold a hand.
One of the things that I want to kind of tack on to what you're saying is David Kessler in his trainings with us is very good about telling us to hold space. And he often shares a story of being a speaker at a conference, and he did see someone visibly upset sitting off to the side, and he walked over, said, "May I sit with you?" And the person said, "Yes, please." And the person continued to cry, and all he did was sit there. And for some period of time, this went on, and that's all that really transpired. He just held space. So I think when the care recipient, our people, also need that space to just process their emotion. And I think that comes up outside of just the caregiver situations. I had a moment with my own child just this week, and there was nothing more to say. And he just had to react. And we just sat there while he processed it. Nothing was said. And that's so hard because people are fixers. So we want to have that good advice, those good final words, and really silence and just allowing the feelings to percolate was really all that the situation warranted.
That is powerful because the reality is we go to school and we learn math, we're taught history, we're taught build a career, manage finances, but we're never taught how to navigate loss or change, uncertainty, just plain heartbreak. Experiences literally everyone is going to face. And we don't touch that subject. So when those experiences show up, people immediately go to, I'm struggling. What's wrong with me? And for caregivers, particularly, it sounds like, why am I grieving my loved one who's still here? That's anticipatory grief. Why am I so frustrated? Why do I feel so guilty for wanting that break? So what that grief education does is help people understand these reactions are absolutely not signs that something is wrong. They are normal responses to significant change. And once we understand that grief often, again, is the change we didn't want, that can make sense. It reminds us that grief, we don't get over it. People are like, when are you going to get over it? You're going to get over it, move past. You don't get over it. It is something we learn to carry. It becomes part of our new identity. And when people can understand that is what's happening to them, there doesn't have to be all this confusion. We're responding to a very difficult situation. And guess what? A very normal way. A very normal way.
Such good information. And I want to focus on empowerment and the DISC assessments. I think it is a really intriguing take on understanding us as humans in this caretaking journey. And I know you do this for grievers. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the DISC assessment is? I'm sure there are some people that probably don't know what it is because they haven't experienced this particular assessment or they've used something different.
Yes. So the DISC is a personality assessment that helps us understand how each one of us are individually wired in ways that we communicate, in ways that we make decisions, in ways that we solve problems, in ways that we interact with each other. So those 4 styles include dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. Of course, like anything, each comes with their own strengths, motivations, and ways of responding to the world around them. Now, I was originally certified through the Maxwell Leadership Program and spent years using DISC in leadership development in corporations, communication, and team building. But what's so fascinating is that the behavior we judge the most in other people, do you know what it is? It is often the very thing helping them literally feel safe. And that becomes really important. I'm going to kind of say that again. The behaviors we judge in others is often the very thing helping them feel safe. So let me explain that a little bit better. You come across the person needing to ask all those questions. You're like, enough with the questions. What about that person who comes barreling in, taking charge? This is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, directing everyone around. Not the person who has to talk literally everything through. That's me. I like to talk out loud. I do that a lot. Or there's that person who stays quiet in the background. None of us wake up and stand in those moments and say, I'm going to be difficult. What they're literally trying to do is meet their need in the only way they know how to, and they don't even know they're doing that. Because when we understand what's driving behavior, we're going to have more acceptance and compassion. And we can remove the conflict and that judgment to have stronger relationships. And that's going to be true whether you're leading a team, caring for our loved ones, or navigating grief.
So how do you use that with grief then? This is my first time learning about this. So if you could kind of talk more about how you use it with grief.
Yes. So DISC is a map for my clients. Literally a map for understanding how they naturally respond. I use it for stress and change. So there's 3 graphs that it shows us: our perceived self, how the world sees us, and how we respond to stress. That particular one is the one that I dive into. So I see all the time someone coming, believing, well, they're doing grief wrong because guess what? They're living in that stress right now. They're not living in the calm. Grief is going to be one of the most stressful situations we can think of. So we start to identify the patterns. So going back to the person who needs to talk about it constantly, and everyone around them seems quiet and withdrawn. Maybe they become frustrated that everyone in the family is grieving differently. Or how many times do we say, you're not grieving, you're not crying? What DISC reveals for me is that those differences aren't the problem. They're a direct reflection on how they are wired to deal with stress. Our personalities often become more attached to the strategies we've always used to feel safe. So what does that mean exactly? What do you mean default to what we feel safe? We grew up in patterns, always looking for safety. Some people find that safety in control. They're the dominant one coming and directing everyone. This is what we're going to do because they're safe in that control. Some people want connection. That's the influencer. They're like, I need to seek connection and be with folks. And some seek just pure stability and continuity. And some just want all the information, right? And Karen, I saw you raise your hand on that, the stability, right? And then there are those people who just give me all the information, the doctors, the tests, all the information. The challenge is that grief and caregiving often put us in places and situations that, guess what? We can't control them. We can't fix them. They can't be just understood or talked away. And that is where people start to feel stuck. So what I love about DISC is that we can recognize the patterns, the pattern on how they respond to stress, the pattern on how they're going to communicate, the pattern on how they seek the safety. So when the pattern in something shifts, we reframe what's wrong with me with, oh, what do I need to do now? What's a different, how's a different approach? And that, to your point, Karen, is where empowerment begins. Because we're going to move from dependence to independence. We don't have to look outside ourselves and wonder what we should be doing by looking for outside answers. When we know ourselves, we can trust what we know about ourselves and frame situations that will bring us back to that safety. So it's not at all changing who we are. It literally is the map to understanding who we are and learning how to work with our natural wiring rather than against it. Does that make sense?
I know it does for me, Michelle, and having done the leadership DISC assessment with you about a year ago, it's really kind of funny as I'm reminding myself of my journey, because I think I said it in our first episode. I feel like a little bit of a lone wolf. And when you see my assessment and how my private self handles the stress and pressure, the thing that I'm less looking for in those situations is the connection. I just want to move forward. I want to get my answers. And that's actually what my leadership assessment actually showed. But we never looked at it from a grief and caregiver side because we were always looking at it from leadership standpoint. So I find it really intriguing that this thing that I did a year ago really is so relevant now in the period of time and stress that I'm in now.
Yes. And I will add, there's a powerful stress response DISC assessment that I use, which breaks down even further, not just our default when everything's blue sky. It's really diving into how does our stress reactors in getting to safety, how do we respond in those situations? And what's really eye-opening is grief doesn't just hit a person, it's families. So I have the ability to use these not as a team, as a family unit. Because when families are stressed, how are they all reacting? By putting the assessment together and working with families to see how they're interacting and how it's changing is eye-opening. Grief is already hard enough. Caregiving is already hard enough. I'm a caregiver to my mom right now. I've done this for my mom and I, and it's given me, oh, that's what she needs right now. That's what Michelle thinks she needs. And for her, same. Oh, now I understand why that could be a little frustrating when I say whatever it is.
So the person receiving the caregiving can take it as well then, and the caregiver and their person can start understanding one another.
Yes. That's why I love it. Consider it like a team. You're a team, a caregiving team. So everyone in the family can take it. A slightly different tweaked version to really hit upon how that's impacting. There's different assessments to bring what's happening in their life, where all four folks take the assessment and you see how you're all responding.
Are you only one DISC style or can you be multiple?
You're always a DISC. It's how high you fall. Okay.
Okay.
So everyone has a DISC. It's where their default lands. Now, again, there's a perceived self. There is how you deal with under pressure and stress. And then there are the ways in which others see you. Now, what's interesting about that is the way you perceive yourself and the way others see you is not going to change much over time. However, the way you deal under stress can. So one of the models I'm also working through and developing is You take it here when the caregiving just starts, right here. I want you to take it in 6, 9, and 12 months, because how you deal with the stress could change. Now, what we would also get is, what does the D actually mean, the dominance? What is the I, the influence, the S and the C? How do they interact? And that gets into a much bigger conversation that we can go over. Of course, it's just those 3 graphs are what they're always rooted from. So to your point that you were making is, everyone's one of them. It's where you fall on a line. And when you know your style and what you lean into, it's where you fall on that graph.
Very interesting.
It's a tool. I wish I had it a long time ago as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking my experiences, saying, what do I wish I could have done, and using it in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Literally using it in my own life, with my family, with my mom. Sometimes we're caregiving for someone we've spent a lifetime trying to understand. And this is giving me a little bit more, right, I get it. Okay, I can work with that. Instead of getting in my own head, making my own judgments on why they're that way.
Sure.
So, Michele, I know you do a very deep dive into this and do the full-blown assessment. What are some quick identifiers for people who are interested in the DISC assessment that want to do a quick search right now and say, I think I'm this? Are there any tips or quick identifiers that you can think of that someone could kind of look at and say, okay, this'll help me on my caregiving journey?
So let's start with, we have DISC. We all have that style within us, okay? So what does that look like? Simple way to think about it. When life gets hard, do you find yourself wanting more control, more connection, the I, influence, more stability, the S, or more information? So the compliance piece. When someone leans more towards dominance, they're probably going to want to find themselves wanting a plan and wanting to take action. Someone who leans more towards influence, oh, they want to talk things through, just start connecting with other folks. Someone who leads more towards steadiness, they're going to focus on taking care of others and keeping everything calm. They're really good at reading the room. And someone who leans toward compliance, they're the ones who are going to go on Google and, WebMD, who knows what it is, and start researching, gathering the information, and trying to understand what's happening. Does that help clarify?
I think absolutely it does. I think that's a great way to understand just ourselves in this journey. And what's interesting too is because you have said that we all have DISC characteristics, it's just where we fall, and especially in the periods of stress. Meredith, you and I in our last episode have certainly talked about advocacy and how we had to be a little bit more driving in getting the information for our person and so on and so forth. So I think you definitely cross all of these characteristics, but then you, I think, land in the one that's most genuine to you. I'm the support, I'm the S. So that's where I'm comfortably landing in stress. I want to take care of everybody else, and then I'll take care of me later. But definitely when things were happening, I was the let's get it done. Let me have my notebook. Let me write everything down, and you're going to repeat that again for me,
Yeah,
So,
that
okay.
explanation definitely explained how it changes over time. Absolutely. I can see where I've been in all of those.
And we know that we all have the DISC, right? And what I was getting at, and I think I can say with more clarity right now, is that each one of the styles, you become dominant in one of them. And each one of them has a dominant fear. So when I was talking about, we go back to safety, when you're in stress, you are going to do everything you can to avoid that fear. Let me explain. For a dominant style, that dominant, their fear is loss of control. So if they don't have control, they're going to come in and do every task. They're going to direct. They're going to take back control however they can. That's when your D comes up. And you might not be naturally wired at a D, but when you're stressed and you're afraid of losing control, that's how it's going to manifest. For an influencer style, their greatest fear is disconnection and rejection. So they are going to make sure they connect with everyone. The last thing they want is the phone calls to stop, the texts to stop. I don't want to be rejected. That's what's happening with the influence. So everything that they do under stress is to make sure they don't feel that way. Again, we want to not have our safety blanket taken away, if you will. Where do we feel safe? And everything we do is to stay safe. So then the steadiness style, they don't want any kind of conflict. They do not want any sort of instability or loss of harmony. So they are in a room. They are taking the temperature every 5 seconds. They are calming everyone. They're even reorganizing where people sit to make sure everyone feels comfortable. Because the last thing that they want is any sort of conflict. Rocky ground is hard for them. Now, the compliance style, the last thing that they want is to be wrong, to make a mistake, not having enough information. So they do everything they can to have all the answers, every single plan mapped out. This is the information. This is what's happening. So again, when the life is going well, we don't see those fears so much. But when stress arrives in any sort of caregiving, any sort of grief, any sort of change you didn't want, we often become more attached to those strategies we've always used. What's really important that we've already determined that none of these are wrong. So when you know you're wired that way, and then the person you're caregiving could be wired this way, you see the patterns and you're like, oh, that's why my husband's going to go read for 20 hours in a day when all I want to do is connect and talk to them because they need to gather the information. And you can have that conversation knowing that's what's going to make me feel safe in a really hard situation. Does that resonate?
Absolutely.
So Meredith, now that you've kind of heard all of this, I mean, we went in broad with all of this. How do you think you might use some of this with your caregiving journey?
Well, I've already pulled it up on my computer, so I would love for my family, for all three of us to take the assessment and just kind of see where we all fall. And I have an idea of where we would all fall, but it would definitely be interesting to be able to see that and discuss it and understand where each of us is coming from. So I definitely, this has been eye-opening for me, and I definitely plan to look into it further.
It's amazing because as Michele was talking, I was watching your face light up with all these aha moments of oh, now I understand it better. And I know I was taking away a lot of this as well. Michele and I have talked about this in length in other conversations. So it's really fascinating to see how this really does play in the roles that we're taking as caregivers. So this has been just such an enlightening conversation. Michele, thank you so much for joining us today because, like I said, eye-opening and great information. So thank you for joining our circle today.
No, thank you for having me. I love this conversation, and you can connect with me at michelebordonaro.com. I am a grief guide, a grief coach, and I create spaces where people can better understand themselves, their grief, changes in life, caregiving. If you're a caregiver who ever found yourself wondering, why am I exhausted all the time? Why is everyone handling this so differently? I would love to continue the conversation. And I'm going to say, I think, Meredith, that could be really good podcast. If you're willing to allow me to break it down for you.
I think that would be great.
We have our next episode planned now.
For being here, Michelle. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. And until next time, take care of yourself while caring for others. And remember, you're never alone in the Caregiver Circle.
The Caregiver Circle is a podcast of two friends providing a place for connection, education, encouragement, and shared experiences. As caregivers, advocates, and lifelong learners, we share stories, resources, and conversations that have helped us along the way, with the hope that they may help you too. While we strive to share helpful information, the content of this podcast is not intended to replace professional medical, legal, financial, or mental health advice. Please consult qualified professionals regarding your specific situation and needs.